Mac, thanks for your time this morning and having a chat in your workshop here, in your exemplar project. And Leighton and I are keen to find out how you've gone about getting this together, the lessons that you've learned and so forth. It's quite inspirational to be here to see the shelf and all the tools and the sections marked out as you've got. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you've gone through making the shed and then organising it like you have?
One of the first hopes that I had was to make the shed available to others, not just me. And therefore, I wanted to make sure everything was labelled clearly. Every box ought to, say, a box of wedges or a box of walking stick rubbers would be available and neatly labelled. Lids and caps and all sorts of things needed to be available to anybody who walked in the shed. Things needed to be obvious, just as I think that one side of a kitchen ought to be a help yourself area, in which things are obvious. There's a kettle and all of the things you need to help yourself.
So, Mac, this looks like you've used a fair bit of repurposed material here in your shed.
Yes, the shed was initially built around two systems. One which was that I wanted a good shape and a frame to the shed, and I wanted through breezes. But the second and most important system was the availability of things. And so, yes, I repurposed lots of boxes and cane baskets and all sorts of things that I got for nothing, and repurposed big buckets, chemical buckets. As you can see on the floor there, I've got some cement in a bucket. Out in the garden, I've got sump oil that I've collected over the years that I use instead of creosote, which you can't get anymore.
Right, thanks, Mac. What about when you set up the shed? I noticed, for instance, there's heat-proof there, there's insulation, and I understand you took account of where the sun would be.
That's all important. The question of where does the breeze come from and when, all those questions are deeply important, and making the shed into a friendly place, a comfortable place, a place to be, and not just a place to do things, was important to me. I wanted it to be comfortable, and so I've put in a spinner on the roof, a mezzanine above us. I wanted the shed to look good from the outside too. I'd been sick of building steel sheds that were hot and uncomfortable and ugly. So I thought a timber shed would be much better.
Righto.
A shed that I could fill with bits and bobs.
Just on that topic of the wooden shed, I noticed you've got some what look like really quite old weatherboards on the outside. Is there a story to them? They look reclaimed.
A house was demolished, and I just grabbed the weatherboards. I found that unless I kept them dry, those which got wet were vulnerable to termites. And so I had to extend the roof a little and replace one wall of weatherboards with corrugated iron. Yeah, but everywhere that termites could attack the place, I protected using either sump oil or treated hardwood logs.
So what's been the inner experience from your point of view with this shed in the time that you've built it and been spending time in it? What's the sort of Mac end of that story?
It's incredibly satisfying to be able to pick up something from the markets like a pair of secateurs for $1, bring them home and empty out my big jar of springs and look for a spring that'll fit and cut it down if needs be. You know, I mean, there's a little tray over there marked side cutters. I've got just the right side cutters for every job. And so I cut down a spring, fit it in the secateurs. I've got to sharpen them up on the grinder, and I've got a new pair of secateurs ready to go. So that sort of experience is very satisfying. Yesterday I was able to come to the shed and put a new rubber on my walking stick. That was great. A couple of days ago I put a hose clamp on the tip of my wife's mop. And she got a very fancy mop that had a trigger on it and it needed a hose clamp to hold it in place. So it's very gratifying to be able to say to yourself, oh, God, I had that for years. I've got a use for it now. Yeah.
Finally, it finds its place in a repair.
There's also, I think, the fact that there is a theorist named Bernard Leach who came up with the idea that a thing had to tell you what it was for. It had to tell you how to pick it up, and it would tell you where to pick it up. It also had to make you want to pick it up. So there are lots of things that I use that are only here in the shed that make you want to pick them up, want to use them. I think I gave you or somebody a beautiful pair of big scissors.
I've been telling everybody about the beautiful pair of big scissors
they're lovely.
They're a joy to touch.
Hanging them on the back wall in the same place for years now. And when I need to cut some shade cloth or vinyl or something heavy, a big pair of scissors is exactly what you need.
They're almost archetypal. They're incredibly scissorly scissors, but also brutally effective because they're so sharp and they're so large and they're so strong. And they're also quite, I've already sort of had a little bit of pleasure, like handling them, and they've got a nice sort of weight and balance, and
they do,
comfortable to use.
They're a knockoff of some English scissors that were made many years ago by the record company. They're made in India. I took those scissors to be sharpened to a bloke in Wolverhampton Street who's a knife doctor. And he identified the scissors for me and sharpened them up. And, lovely fella. I ended up giving him some knives from my knife collection. So being a collector of pocket knives and things over the years has been just a small pleasure involving thinking about, how would this be used? I've never worked in an abattoir, but I can see how a boning knife works. I see why it's built like this, and it's worth having just to pick up every year or so. There are lots of things that you surround yourself with just for the pleasure of having them. And there are lots of people who need to have things that remind them of past events.
So this is, I take it, how far back for you do you think this sort of personal experience of like the satisfactions of these kind of objects and the kind of perception of their utility and useful, were you always a guy that was into this?
But out of my pocket I've just pulled a knife that I've had since 1973.
Wow.
This little pocket knife is in breach of Jack's law, which is a recent law preventing people from carrying concealed weapons. But in 1973 I got it in order to cut through ropes when I had men standing around ready to take a big motorbike or something that was tied to a wall of a railway wagon.
All right.
So having a knife was really important back in the day. And nowadays I just use it to cut the back legs off a cooked chook and that sort of thing. But it's good to be able to pull it out when somebody makes you a hamburger. You know, it's great to have it in your pocket. I put it in my pocket every day and put it in the cabinet drawer at night time, along with my keys and wallet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I have it in my pocket every day of my life. It's just part of who I am, really.
Right, thanks, Matt. You said before, you told us about the shed being your happy place, right?
Yes.
And that you wanted it and you designed it and you built it to be somewhere where people want to be, not just do.
Well, yes, I had in mind that as the years went on, other fellas converted their sheds into places where there was a bar and a TV and a bed and so on. But and I bought a bed and stuck it in, but you know, I only used it occasionally when I got into trouble with the missus. And so I never intended the shed to be, as you say, more than a happy place, except that there are new ways of being happy as you get older. So I figured I'd be able to convert this shed and use it not to store things that could be stored outside, but to surround myself with familiar things, good things.
Thanks, Mac. Does this shed help other people, help your friends, family, help yourself?
Well, every now and again, family comes in and borrows some tools and forgets to return them. But
Like scissors.
I'd see them lying around. No, the scissors are yours. I'm glad
Now.
they've found a good place, a good home.
Oh, very grateful.
No, it's wonderful. It's great now that the shed is passing on to new people. That the tools are going to be loved. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a personal comment on that, but yeah, I'm very kind of mindful of that too, because I didn't grow up sort of surrounded by blokes doing stuff. You know, I was kind of more kind of raised by women. My dad was a minor part of the picture, but a great deal of what's led me to all kinds of craft and the things that we're talking about, like the joy of a tool that. It's obvious what it is. It's satisfying to touch. It does the job well. It's a thing of beauty to look at because it's functional, all that. This is something that's come to me through typically older guys, right? Guys with more experience who you go and ask questions of and whatnot. So to be part of the process of receiving some very useful things that you've selected over the years for their usefulness and, to sort of be able to add them to my, at this point in my life, ever expanding collection of tools and whatnot is it's really nice to have that social connection and that continuity.
I've already moved on. The shed has moved on. The section of the shed behind you used to be full of automotive repair tools.
Oh, right.
I had all the spanners imaginable, all sorts of things, 12-volt systems, soldering irons, all sorts of devices for cars, trailers, for wiring up trailers. I had various methods of rust-proofing trailers and so on. So I did lots of work like that in the years gone by, but then I happily had a couple of neighbours who were petrol heads, and there was a boy growing up, so I gave him my spanners. That was a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the next thing we were interested to ask you about, and I guess this is kind of a really quite sort of I don't know, big picture kind of, the really macro picture in a way, but how do you see this exemplar project of yours, this shed, as making the world a better place for our children's children, and a kind of bigger story? Is there something you'd like to say there?
I don't. There's something about being human that won't go away. And the things about being human that won't go away, not just being comfortable, not just seeing a tree when you get out of bed in the morning, not just having something growing, not just seeing an insect or a spider or a lizard where you didn't expect to. It's also got to do with the pleasure of being who you are. I grew up in a world where your identity was given to you.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to invent yourself or reinvent yourself, although I suppose I have. It was all about identity and duty, your role and your duty, never mind your feelings. So being in touch with feelings is always difficult for me, but I feel a sense of duty towards those in the future who will share with me a sense of the importance of things, the importance of keeping things, keeping old things. Behind you, for example, there's a timber ladder. I'm not sure where I got it, but I've had it many, many years, a wooden step ladder. And I have lots of antiques that remind me of my childhood. Behind you, there's an antique kerosene heater on the floor. I never did get around to using it in the shed here, but I'm reminded of my early childhood by kerosene heaters. Mm-hmm. And there are some things that remind you not just of your childhood, but of who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
Having this knife in my pocket reminds me of who I really am and who I've been for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reminded every time I see somebody from my past. And in going into a new future, in a few short years, I imagine I'll be in a nursing home. Nevertheless, I'll still remain who I am and still be able to pass on to others affirmation that their love of things,
mm-hmm.
their love of things that remind them of who they are, is worth having and worth keeping.
So it's sort of almost the opposite of the consumable and the disposable and the nothing behind me matters, right? It's there's a vehicle for being honest about who one is and true to that.
Well, yes, there was in the past a habit of keeping furniture that belonged to grandma, and I suppose I've been part of that. But nowadays, people who are young tend to go to IKEA
mm-hmm.
and pick up new stuff. But the new stuff means that the old stuff, old grandma furniture, goes to the dump. So there's lots of stuff at the tip that's good stuff. I've brought home lots of things from the tip itself.
It doesn't seem to be very long before a lot of that IKEA stuff seems to end up on the footpath for the curbside collection. And a lot of it, I note too, is it's very heavily constructed from things like chipboard and MDF and that kind of thing. So while it might look pretty schmick when you load it into the back of the car, in comparison to that solid piece of timber that came from grandma's place, just sort of doesn't even have the longevity.
That's true, yes. But not everything that goes on the footpaths is rubbish. Sometimes I've taken my trailer around and picked up microwaves.
Mm-hmm.
A microwave oven has inside it a donut-shaped magnet. When you stick a broom handle through 3 or 4 of those magnets, you end up with a very handy tool, so that if you spill some screws in the grass, you can pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's lost, anything that's ferrous that's lost, you can pick up out of grass or anywhere on the floor that you've dropped it. And even on this floor of the shed, occasionally, although I've got a sign, no bare feet, occasionally I see a bit of steel shavings or screws or whatever, and pick them up using the magnet that I've made out of dead microwaves.
Right. I was wondering what your sign was about there, but it's serious. You're actually trying to protect people's feet from the kinds of swarf and whatever that.
If a dog walks in here, it might
of course,
get
yes.
a shard of steel in its foot.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Mac, the next topic is about how parts fit together. When you're doing a piece of craft, how the parts fit together to make a whole. When you're designing a piece of craft, all the components and its, as you say, the affordances, its use, how that all works. So for me, I'd like to ask you to expand or go into what you said before, that craft reminds you of who you really are.
Well, craft is about embodiment, and not just having a brain that will take your body to a meeting or take your body somewhere. Craft is about keeping something that is worth keeping. Craft is about making something that is worth making, putting something together that is worth putting together, including yourself and your relationships. It seems to me that being who you are is about affordances, about using your hands as they can be used, as you've used them many times before. When I've got a sore thumb, for example, everything annoys me. All sorts of important everyday things hurt. And so that's an impediment to the business of being human, not just an impediment to craft, not just an impediment, not just something that hurts when I pick something up. It's about being an embodied person.
Yes, thanks, Mac. I'm reminded of my little saying is trying, as you just did then, to show us how important hands and fingers are. Try and have a conversation sitting on your hands.
Yes, it's terribly important to philosophers to make thought experiments about disembodied moral agents and disembodied brains and so on. The brain in the vat experiment is typical of the way philosophers conceptualize life. But I'm asking, what passes for football on Mars if they haven't got any feet? So if you can't use your feet, as some of our friends have experienced the loss of their feet. My wife, for example, had a stroke some years ago and lost the use of her body and gradually had to learn to walk again. And so embodiment is incredibly important to
Thanks, Mac.
being human.
Got a couple more points on this particular discussion area,
Yes.
if I may.
Mm.
The next one is what you've done here is shown the link between the shed and the social aspects of building the shed, between craft and the social aspects of craft, and how we are human, for instance, with our hands.
Yes, I think that's worth looking for evidence of. I think we see evidence every day, and we look past those things. I mean, when I walk into the shed and I've got a job to do, find a rubber to put on my walking stick, I stop thinking about the fact that I need a walking stick and why I need a walking stick. That's not at the surface of my thoughts. But the big picture is always there in the background, Paul.
Yeah. Thanks, Mac. One other point before we go to the next question is about your batteries for all your tools there. I understand that you've gone through a process of selecting a number of brands because they have a guaranteed compatibility from one generation of tool to the next.
Yes, Paul, I've needed to standardise on one connection protocol, one brand. I started with another brand and found that they changed their connection protocols.
Couldn't use the same battery.
Couldn't get a new battery for the old tool. So there are three companies that...
What are the brands that have agreed not to change their battery setting?
The batteries are... The three brands are Ryobi, AEG, and Milwaukee.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Milwaukee is the high-end stuff.
Yes, it is.
And
Yeah.
I've got the...
My son uses
I've
that.
got the Ryobi, which is the low-end stuff. I have a light, a spotlight. I have a blower. I have a circular saw. I have a number of other things. A hedge trimmer and a couple of other things, Paul. Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, Mac.
So, Mac, what and how have you learnt from this shed? And what are your thoughts about sharing those learnings with other people?
Having this conversation today has enabled me to see that the things that are true about me are true about lots of people. And the facts about what you need to support your interests and to support your identity within your context is worth thinking about. So to be able to repair a wiggly teapot handle is a useful thing, but it's more important to know that you can fix it, to know that you don't have to throw it out. You don't have to go to Myers. You don't have to get a new one. That's all important to me. And I think there are lots of people out there who need the capacity to do a few things, you know. But it's not just that I need the capacity to do a few things. I've got mates who can do things. So if I don't have a soldering gun, then I can go to a mate who does have one. Yeah.
Yep. Or find out how it's done. Or
I suppose that sort of information is easy to find nowadays.
Yeah. It's very interesting what you say, Mac, because I think we sort of, part of what we're on about here is we sort of, we also kind of share this hypothesis that what might be, in many cases, a sort of often a quite private experience for someone, in their shed or fixing that teapot or whatever is a lot more universal than we realise. You know that And perhaps there's something about the way craft occurs that we don't often talk about it so much, right?
Yes, Leighton. I remember once when you fairly recently described how that you prefer pressure hoses on internal combustion engines to be sleeved inside stainless coil.
Look, there's that, and I'm very, very fond of silicon hose too. Yeah, in that context.
Yeah. Well, that sort of understanding was private for you, but it occurs to me that I've never had that understanding, never done that. Mm-hmm. Always used standardized components purchased from the local Repco or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking that there is a conversation to be had around internal combustion engines.
Most definitely, and I guess what we might learn from each other is far from obvious, right? Yeah. What we might think assume everyone has independently discovered, may in fact not be the case, or there may be things that we think are quite our own special secret sauce or something, and everybody's actually figured out the same thing.
Well, there was a time when I reckoned that I could put a new clutch and pressure plate in any vehicle, truck, car, forklift, anything. A bulldozer, mm-hmm. I reckon I can do it. But now they're all automatic.
One of the things I've found, recalling how you used to have a lot of automotive stuff over the back here.
I did, yeah.
And when I was doing my automotive work, it was hugely challenging for me. And I think this goes to your point about people really need to be able to have something that they can fix it. Because when I do like a head on a motor, I would actually shite myself because I knew that it could either work or not work.
Yeah.
It was a yay or a nay, you know what I mean? I remember I put the valve springs in wrong once, and I'm turning over this Vauxhall, turning it over, and there was nothing. Nothing. I checked the pressures, and the pressures were all zero. And so that's when I figured that I'd done the wrong thing. And I fixed up the springs, pressures came up, and it started. But the point is, I'm reflecting on what you say, is that people, your loved ones, will depend on that working, right? They're in the car with you. You're fixing the automotive stuff. And I always used to know when I hit that button to get the motor going, there was no more bullshit. You know, it worked or it didn't work. You couldn't go into a philosophical rant about it. There was that certain concrete test in reality that was important, what you're saying. The other point that you referred to was you're talking about this conversation, helping you realise the process in common with other people, your friends and colleagues, other people doing craft. Well, that's what these questions have been about, because a lot of craft people might do automotive work, or they might do basket work or cooking, or they might do gardening, and there's very little mix between those. Well, what we've tried to do here with these 6 questions is get the common process. So thank you for that, because these questions can be shared across craft categories, and we intend to do that over time.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much.
If you've made it this far, then we hope this is because you've been enjoying our content. So if you're not reading, watching, or listening to this on Substack, then we'd like you to visit us there and, of course, subscribe. We're at craftyeccentrics.substack.com. Substack is where we provide the full range of our content, both free and also some just for paying subscribers. It's where we hope to build a community of interest around craft. And subscribing there can really help us keep producing more content. Otherwise, just liking, subscribing, and sending our content on to others you think would be interested on whatever platform you're on is something we'd really appreciate.